Hi, friends. There are moments when patterns converge, and the choices we make in those windows shape everything that follows. Right now, I'm watching three cycles line up like gears in a machine. The 18.6-year real estate and economic cycle, the 4-year Bitcoin halving and mania cycle, and the 4-year US presidential election cycle. Each tells a story on its own, but together they whisper the shape of what's coming. And if you know how to listen, you can step into alignment rather than get swept away. This week's newsletter is about anticipation. It's a peek into how I'm rotating my portfolio ahead of 2026, a deeper reflection on what happens if the financial model itself is replaced after 2029, and a guide to how we prepare for the uncertainty that may follow. Let's dig in. When the cycles converge. I've been tracking the 18.6-year property cycle for over a decade now, watching how liquidity, political change, and human behavior repeat like clockwork. The last major crash was in 2008. That places 2026 right on time. But this time is different. Bitcoin is peaking in the same window. Election rhetoric is intensifying. Tariffs are returning. It's not just economic rhythm, it's institutional volatility layered on top of technological transformation. So, how do we prepare? We don't wait for the cycle to confirm. We position before the pivot with intention. That means looking past the market noise and identifying what to rotate into, not just what to exit. The portfolio changes need to happen when the public narrative is still euphoric, because that's when assets are mispriced and opportunity is masked by momentum. Here's how I'm thinking about the timing. Late 2025. By this point, we may be seeing Bitcoin and tech assets at or near all-time highs. Gold may be declining slightly as capital re-embraces risk. But if we wait until Q1 2026 to rotate, we'll be too late. So the first pivot should occur here. This is when I plan to lock in gains from Bitcoin and altcoins, rotate into undervalued equities in building, ag tech, infrastructure, and commodities, begin phasing out of gold positions incrementally. This is a pivot moment to get ahead of the crowd, stepping out of overheated assets while narratives are still bullish. Early to mid 2026, Bitcoin crashes, equities briefly spike, but then housing and credit conditions start to deteriorate and inflation expectations rise as the Fed attempts to thread the needle. This is when I plan to hold cash and reposition, slowly build long-term gold exposure while it's still underappreciated, and begin accumulating protective puts on overextended equities. It'll also be a good time to scout international relocations or lifestyle arbitrage options while real estate softens. Our moves here are not about panic, but about creating room to maneuver. 2027 to 2029, equity markets are likely to stagnate, geopolitical pressure rises, and digital asset infrastructure will continue to expand quietly along with AI and other cutting-edge technologies, perhaps fusion for energy and quantum computing. Here, precision becomes more important than trends. I'll begin to DCA back into Bitcoin while it consolidates at its cycle bottom. The key through here is to stay hedged and flexible with exit strategies across currencies, geographies, and platforms. Optionality is the goal as potential civil unrest results from the economic hardships. By this phase, I'll want to have already chosen my positions for the next cycle and protected my ability to pivot again if needed. As I reflect on these rotations, I'm reminded that real wealth is built not in the surge, but in the repositioning ahead of it. This isn't about market timing, it's about cycle fluency and strategic anticipation. Financial reflection: what happens after 2029? There's a question I keep circling back to. What if the old system doesn't come back? What if 2029 marks not just the beginning of another property cycle, but the final breath of the debt-based model we've known since Bretton Woods? Many theories are circulating, including UBI funded by tokenized assets, blockchain-backed currencies, even asset confiscation. But after reflecting on the data, what's becoming clear to me is that the foundation of the next property cycle will likely still be debt-based, but it will be debt restructured, digitally issued, and tightly surveilled, packaged in the language of nationalism, modernization, equity, and efficiency. This is especially the case if the AI technology disrupts the GDP production models, creating imbalances in access to resources. Basel III is already laying the groundwork. Far from replacing the current system, it's reforming it by tightening capital requirements, managing crypto exposure, and preparing for a world where tokenized debt instruments and digital sovereign bonds become the new normal. It occurs to me that we're not witnessing the end of the Bretton Woods model, but rather its mutation, where ownership may still exist, but more of it will be conditional. Value may still be created, but less of it will be private. As I reflect on these shifts, the insight that surfaces is that resilience in the next cycle won't come from playing the old game better. It will come from knowing where the new rules are hidden and building strategies that provide permissionless access, sovereign cash flow, and real asset control. That's why I'm focusing on Bitcoin in cold storage as long-term monetary independence, immune from centralized manipulation, productive land and mobile equity, not just owning land, but ensuring it can generate value in multiple ways through food production, energy generation, or temporary relocation potential. Mobile equity of assets that can be shifted across borders, jurisdictions, or industries with minimal friction. Portable token optional business models, ventures that can operate outside centralized payment rails, whether through crypto, barter, or low compliance jurisdictions. Ideally, they can be scaled digitally, relocated globally, and function whether tokens are required or rejected. Communities that preserve mutual value outside the gatekeeping, real or virtual collectives where contribution and reputation replace credentials and compliance. These are the spaces where aligned values, resource exchange, and skill sharing can thrive without third-party permission. Because when debt is digital and participation is permissioned, freedom changes from principle to strategy. See the newsletter directly for a table of conditions and actions for each period of time between now and 2029. Investor Skills Corner. This issue's glossary highlights some of the concepts and terms referenced in this newsletter. Property cycle, 18.6 years, a recurring pattern of economic boom and bust tied to land and credit. Bitcoin halving cycle occurs every 4 years, reduces supply issuance, and historically leads to bull runs. Dollar cost averaging, DCA, investing the same amount at regular intervals to reduce volatility impact. UBI, Universal Basic Income, a fixed regular payment to citizens, proposed in automated economies. Tokenized assets, physical or financial assets issued digitally on blockchain for fractional, programmable ownership. Basel III, international regulatory reforms aiming to improve banking sector stability, includes crypto and digital asset considerations. Final thoughts. Are you watching the signs? Can feel it too? We are not in a normal cycle. It feels more a transitional phase between worlds. The temptation is to look away and hope the old models will still apply as we transition from this old cycle to the next. But for those of us with vision, this is the time to get sharper, to look at our portfolios, not just as containers of wealth, but as strategies for future participation, to ask not just what should I buy, but who do I want to be when the new system is born? The answers aren't simple, but the questions are urgent, and asking them together is where our power lies. Until next time, P.S. If you'd like to learn more or get involved in our Friday discussions, send me an email. I'd love to have you join us.